Here we have our scroll down of previously saved items. If we go to record number 2 and click on it, lets us know that we've modified this current sheet. We will be losing the changes, and that'll be okay. So this one is example 1DA single family dwelling found in Annex D of the NEC code. If we go over to our customer's notes and click on it, the NEC code states that we should have 77.5 amps in the standard calculation and a 60.6 amps of neutral. So if we go down here, we look at line amps, we have 77.5 and 60.6 as per the code requirements. So if we go over here now on the load selector, we can click on ranges, dryers, heating systems, heat pumps, etc. When we click on the dwelling and then we click on square foot, it brings up our square foot convert utility. We can enter the dimensions of the building, we can enter the square footage of the building, or we can pull down and select the square footage, or we can enter the square meters. If you don't like this square foot conversion unit popping up every time you click in the VA section, you can click this button right here and return. Now when you click in the square foot section, it won't pop up. Now notice as I hover over it, we get a tooltip that says press S to enter the square feet conversion utility. So now we'll have to hit the S on the keyboard to enter the square foot conversion utilities. Let's go ahead and turn it back on and return. Now notice if we let it set for 120 seconds without moving the mouse, it will actually close this down to keep track of the programming. The next item we have is ranges. Now ranges, the code requires a minimum of 1750 VA for the smallest range and 27,000 for a maximum. So if we turn off the messages here, now we're going to see the messages being displayed, and I go ahead and just click once, that gives 1,000, and I move out of this space. It's going to tell us that the range value in 2 was less than 1750 VA, so the program automatically increased it to 1750 minimum wattage for a range. Also, if I was to type in 40,000, then it would say range value in 3 exceeds 27,000 watts and is derating it down to 27,000 to meet code. Same with the dryer. If I just click in the dryer one time, it's going to tell us that standard calculation requires a minimum of 5,000 VA, so it's upgrading it to 5,000 automatically. So if I disable these messages by clicking this, it'll simply just make the changes for us without notifying us what it's doing. Alright, now moving down to heating systems. When I click in the VA, then the wattage convert utility pops up. I can either enter the wattage through BTU, tonnage. I can enter it by using a horsepower size. I can enter it by using horsepower here, or I can just simply enter the VA, or the wattage of the item of the heating system. We can also edit the one-phase table by clicking on that button, or we can edit the three-phase motor table by clicking on this one. And by doing that, we have the voltage, the amperage of the motor, the horsepower, the decimal equivalents of the horsepower. It's recommended that we don't alter any of these unless you're familiar with what you're doing. So now that we have 6,406.4 watts, let's go ahead and say OK, and then notice that's entered into our VA. Next we'll go to heat pumps. If we just know the horsepower of our heat pump, we go ahead and click on the wattage and enter the horsepower. In this case we're going to have a 5 horsepower 230 and say OK, and there it'll enter the wattage for us. The same thing with air conditioning. If I don't know the wattage, I know the horsepower, I can go ahead and click on the horsepower and just enter the horsepower and update it, and then it'll put it in for me. Now going back to the heating systems, this is the motor size here, 26 amps, so I'm going to click that as the largest motor. And I'm going to go on heat pump, and I'm going to also click this as the largest motor. I'm going to go to air conditioning and click this as the largest motor. And I'm going to go to appliance and add a garbage disposal and click this as the largest motor. We can click on as many of them as we want, but the program will figure out which is the largest motor and use it. We can figure that out by clicking on view 120, 208, and 240 volt load. 25% of the largest motor is 1610 for the 240 volt load. So we don't have to figure it out. We can just click on every system. We can call every system the largest motor, but the program will figure it out for us. Okay, so the last thing that we'd like to do here is look at the 120 volt large loads. And in this case, any load that's above 30 amps will be considered a large 120 volt load. In this case, we don't have any. This concludes 3 of 5 training video on how to use Thor Full and Thor Light.